Hello everyone, welcome to this session where I'll be taking you through understanding SAP licensing and measurement models. So in this session, we have the agenda. First on the list is introduction to SAP licensing. Then we'll go straight into the different licensing types, comprising of SAP named user, the SAP engine, and the SAP indirect access. The SAP software is modular and can scale in line with customers' growing business or need. The SAP tool or portal is very scalable. So, irrespective of the industry your company finds itself, manufacturing, oil and gas, logistics, the SAP software can be tweaked to meet your need. Now, if we have a software that is this scalable and flexible, then obviously the payment will cost quite an amount of money. But more importantly, the licensing will not be as easy as expected. That is why it is crucial for organizations to understand SAP licensing so as to ensure that they are not losing money to either fines or overpurchase of licenses. So join me as I go into the different types of SAP licensing that we have. We have the SAP named user licensing, we have the SAP engine licensing, and lastly, we have the SAP indirect access licensing. For the SAP named user licensing, as the name says, is a licensing that puts into account users in your organizations that have been created on the SAP portal. If you are familiar with the SAP tool, you will know that users are created on the tool to perform different activities, ranging to whatever your organization produces or is into. Now, why do we need to license users that are created on the portal? Now, users need to be licensed on the portal because users are performing different activities on the portal. Now, depending on the type of activity a user is performing on the tool, will determine the type of license a user is required. So we have hierarchy of the named user licensing based on operations allowed, and we have same hierarchy based on costs as well. So the higher the permissions required or granted by a license, the more expensive the license is. We have the developer license, the expert user license, the professional license, the limited professional license, the employee license, the test user license, and all these licenses I have mentioned are all named user licenses. Now I'll go into the professional licensing. Now the professional licensing or the professional license is a license that is assigned to a user to perform certain operation tasks, system administration, or system management on the SAP portal. And we know that the SAP tool helps you map your organization processes. Now, a user is created on the tool to perform a day-to-day activity or a routine activity based on the user's job description. Now, this activity the user performs will require him to have a license to perform these activities on the SAP tool. If a user is given a professional license, but the user performs an activity that is lower than the professional license, the organization is said to be wasting money. Because the number one rule of assigning licenses to named users on the SAP portal is to assign the least required license for a user to perform his or her activity. Because it's not understanding SAP licensing is just not to understand SAP licensing to pass compliance audits, but to ensure that you are optimal with your licenses, meaning you give a user just the right amount of license required to perform his or her activity, nothing more, nothing less. We'll go next to the next license, the limited professional. The limited professional license is a lesser license to the professional license. For instance, now we have a named user. Let me use my name, Olalikon. Olalikon is in Tamani, and Olalikon requires a license, a professional license. But the basis admin in Tamani has given Olalikon limited professional license. Yes, Olalikon can go about performing his activities that are within the scope of a professional license. If SAP comes to audit Tamani, SAP will find out that Olalikon has made Tamani non-compliant with SAP usage because he has been assigned a limited professional license, but the type of activity he's performing on the SAP tool requires him to have a professional license. Yes, this is not entirely Olalekan's fault, but the SAP places admin in Tamani. So this person is supposed to know what activity is performed by who to understand the type of licenses he or she should assign to individuals. And lastly, we have the employee license. This is the least permission license required for a user to have within the SAP tool. So this type of licenses are given to users that are not frequent on the tool, but they have been created on the tool. So it's just a safe license to have if you are performing little or no activity on the SAP portal. So now we'll move to the second type of SAP licensing. It's called the SAP Engine licensing. The SAP Engine licensing, or should I start from what are SAP engines? SAP engine are also known as SAP packages, and they are external components that are on offer to organizations should they need them. The typical example, or the most common example that organizations use, is the SAP payroll engine. The payroll engine allows an organization pay their employees through the SAP portal. So the finance department will have to map out the payroll processes within the organization on the SAP tool. And most of these are just approval processes within the finance department. Now, for the payroll engine, I'll be using the payroll engine as an example for explaining the SAP engine licensing. The payroll engine is licensed by, or the license metric for the payroll engine is per employee, meaning per every employee that is on the payroll list, a license is required by SAP, for you to have. We also have an example of the SAP upstream or the SAP downstream. These are engine licensing. Their license metric differs. For the downstream and the upstream, they are licensed per revenue. So these are the complexities that you'll have to face when you're trying to understand the SAP engine licensing. It's not as straightforward as the SAP named user. No, not at all. Then moving straight to the last is the SAP indirect access. This is very much direct, even though the name says SAP indirect access. So what SAP allows is SAP allows third-party application to interface with the SAP tool. Why do I need a third-party application to interface with my SAP tool? Let's take, for instance, the previous example we used for the payroll. Now you've mapped out your payroll process from A to Z on the SAP portal or the SAP system, basically, and it has gotten to Z, meaning your payroll is ready and payment can be made. You don't have to take out the last approval process and start making the payments manually. You can just interface your payment platform to SAP, picks the approval list, and ensures payment is made to all your employees so that everybody can go home happy at the end of the month. So now this type of interface might require you to have a license, because what you are using an SAP output and you are imputing it into a new system. So SAP may or may not require you to license based on the type of configuration or interfacing you are doing. Now, how do I know if I have to license my SAP indirect access or not? So upon renewal of your SAP contract, you'll be given a contract document that basically contains your do's and don'ts. In this document, you should be able to see, oh, am I going to be licensed for this type of indirect access or not? But then if you are confused as to whether you need a license for your indirect third-party application interfacing or not, you can always reach out to us at www.tamaniconsulting.com, or you can reach out to me at t.olalekon@tamaniconsulting.com. I'll be sure to answer any of your SAP licensing questions or needs. Thank you very much for your time. Do have a pleasant day.